I do not know what it was like to be alive during the birth of Jesus and live that experience of, is this the one? Is this the one we've been waiting for? But I do know what it is like to be alive for the lifetime of someone who was considered a living saint. Do you have anyone in your mind when I say that who's a living saint for you? Someone who you think, oh my gosh, that is just a living embodiment of everything that we are aiming at. It has been a while since this person was alive, but many of you will remember Mother Teresa. She was like universally recognized as a living saint. People saw her as the holiest kind of person that walked the earth. Now, her story was a little bit interesting because she was already a nun before she was really holy. She wasn't that holy as a young nun. Nothing against her, but she was part of an order that was kind of pretty typical, pretty conventional. They didn't do much that would turn people's heads. She taught rich girls in a private prep school. It's a fine job, but it doesn't make anybody call you a living saint. But one day she was on a train and saw poor people out the window, and she said, who's going to take care of them? Who is going to be with them? And so she left her order and started a new order, a new group of nuns, never before had been known. And she named them the Missionaries of Charity. And their main job was to go into the slums of major cities and take care of the people there who were dying, who had nothing. People heard about what she was doing, and when I was a kid, she was an international sensation. Everybody knew her name. She had a household name, and we all thought of her as a living saint. Sometimes people would come around her just to be around her holiness because she was so great. So one person who was interviewing her once, a journalist, asked her, Mother Teresa, what do you think is the root of all the problems in the world today? And she said, it's very simple. The root of all the problems in the world today is that people draw the circle of their family too small. One of the main jobs of our faith is to widen the circle of our family, to include more people in our minds when we consider, who am I related to? Who is my family? Who is dear to my heart, close to the center of who I am? That's one of the main jobs of faith. That's what's supposed to differentiate us from people who don't have a faith practice. We widen our circle, and we treat more people from more backgrounds with more reverence. I am part of a support group that meets on Saturdays at 10 a.m., and it's the kind of group that you can come and go from. We're always there, a small group of us, and some weeks I don't go, other weeks I do. But what it means is when we start the meeting at 10 a.m., there's a circle of us sitting in chairs in a room. But a lot of folks come late. I'm one of them. So at 10:05, there's more people than there were. And so we add more chairs. And then at 10:15, there's a lot more people, and we add more chairs. And if you're not careful, then adding more chairs turns the circle into like a kidney bean. And there's like a hernia over here. And so eventually someone will say, let's back the chairs up. Let's widen the circle. And as soon as you do that and you make the circle bigger, everybody's sitting cheek to cheek. Everybody's right side by side. No more kidney bean. No more bulging out. It's just a beautiful circle where everyone has a spot. And that is a little bit about what we're hearing in the readings tonight. God said to Abraham, generations before Jesus, many, many years before Jesus came, Jesus, when he was a kid, heard about Abraham from long in the past. God appeared to Abraham and said, I have plans for you. I want to widen the circle of heaven to include you. And I want you to be a part of what I'm doing. And Abraham's response is interesting. He says, Lord, I don't even have a family. It's just me and my wife. How are you going to do something great with me if there's only 2 people in my family? And God said, Abraham, go outside. Look at the stars in the sky. I can only imagine what the sky looked like in those times when there was no electricity. Can you imagine? Look at the sky. How many stars? Can you count them? As many stars as there are, that's how big your family is. That's how big the family that you're going to have is. Mother Teresa was asked, what's the root of all the problems in the world? People draw the circle of their family too small. I don't know how many of you have taken advantage of the fact that our parish now produces a podcast. It's brand new. It's just come out during coronavirus, and it is called Profiles of Endurance, and it features people in our parish or people who are somehow connected to our parish going through a lot of hard things in life and what they did to get through it. And there are people here right now who have been featured. How cool is that? If you haven't checked it out, you can go to anywhere where you get your podcasts. It's on Spotify and Apple, but it's also on my YouTube channel. Anyway, there was a recent one from the summer with a nurse, Erin Hegarty Snyder. It's one of my favorite conversations. She has been an ER nurse for years, and she loves doing that work. She said that in the ER, everything's fast-paced, never boring. She said they're specialists at what she calls fix 'em and ship 'em. She only stops the bleeding, makes sure that the heart rate comes back to normal, and then she gives them to someone who's going to help them in the long term. Well, that all changed in March because she's at a Catholic hospital in Buffalo, and they converted from being a regular hospital to an all COVID-19 facility. And when you're a COVID hospital, there is no emergency room. It's all ICU. So she had to decide what she was going to do. The hospital asked all the staff, make a decision. Do you want to be transferred to another location? Do you want to be furloughed? Or do you want to do this? And she has a husband that she loves. She has parents that she's close to. And she has a 2-year-old named Jackson. And in the conversation, I asked her, did you consider not doing it? I mean, this virus could take you out. And here's what she said. This virus could take out anyone in my family. And if there wasn't someone like me taking care of someone's someone, what's going to happen? If there wasn't someone like me taking care of someone's someone, what would happen? Don't you love that? Someone's someone. She sees the circle of her family as much bigger than just the people with her DNA. Everyone has a someone that needs to be taken care of. And they're my someone, she thought. Why wouldn't I do that? It's like we start to realize that everybody's story is everybody's story. The stuff you're going through might be a little different than the stuff I'm going through, but deep down, your story is my story. And your story is very similar to other stories as well. I mean, just from my own life, I'm an adopted child. My biological mother was 15. So was Jesus's. Everybody's story is everybody's story. Now, I'm not comparing myself to Jesus, but you get my point. Last week, I was a guest speaker at the 10th grade faith formation class in Ravenna at St. Patrick's. And the teens in the session could ask me any question they wanted. And one of the questions I got, which I always get, is, why can't priests be married? And we talked about that. But one of the main components of the tradition of priests not getting married is exactly this. Priests not getting married blurs the lines of where a family begins and ends. It blurs the distinction. because I have no children and no spouse, and I will live alone always. But what do you call me? The name Father. Do you see? It's meant to blur the lines. Not reverend, not like it's a job title, something much closer. Family. And this was the first Christmas in my life that I did not get to see my parents or my brother. And because we're a small family and close-knit, that's never happened before. But my family is not just the little circle of the Vanderveers. My family is bigger than that. And after all, the fact that you call me Father is a reminder to you and to me that our family is bigger than the one that involves our DNA. We've got to draw the circle of our family bigger. We've got to widen the circle. And so if you're my family, I've got to do right by you. I can't just go hang out with my family in Rochester and enjoy them and put myself at all sorts of risk to you. Drawing the circle of the family bigger is really what's behind wearing masks, even if you hate them. That's what's behind it, is that it's not for the person wearing them. It's for the family, the big family of which we're all a part. Something happened in the gospel that happens to us all the time. Mary and Joseph brought Jesus to what essentially for their culture was like his baptism. It was his presentation in the temple. And you know, a lot of folks have their baby baptized in the temple today. And the thing that happened to them when they got there is they got more than they bargained for, because all of a sudden all these people came up to them. Simeon and Anna, these are like church ladies kind of people that didn't know them at all. And they were like, your baby, I've been waiting for him. This is it, this is the big one. And they were like, what? You know, they were probably at the point where the message from the angel was starting to fade, because they delivered a baby in a barn by then. It's starting to not get so special, it's starting to get pretty complicated. And so imagine that they walk up to this, essentially the feeling of a baptism in the temple, and everybody recognizes their baby. They've been waiting for the baby. And Mary and Joseph start to realize, we're a part of something much bigger than just our little nuclear family. That's one of the main things that happens in baptism. Some of you have been to baptisms at Mass, where the whole community's involved. But even if the community's not there, when we have a baptism, Deacon Mike or I ask them questions at the beginning, 3 questions that are reminiscent of the questions asked in the temple. What name do you give your child? What are you asking of this church for God's child? And do you understand what you're undertaking? And the reason we ask those questions is so that the couple, maybe for the first time, gets to realize, oh my gosh, this is not my baby. I have to surrender this child to God. This child is from God. This is not my family and my story. I'm part of something much bigger. So Christmas is the real reason that we need to widen the circle, because that is what God did at Christmas. God said, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, no, not wide enough. I'm going to widen it. I'm going to come down and I'm going to make everyone I've ever created a part of this family. Because the biggest problem in the world, the one that everything else is connected to, the big hub of the spokes, the root of the problem, people draw the circle of their family too small.